midnight reckoning. It was one of those restless nights when sleep eluded me. The clock on my wall blinked 2 a.m. in crimson digits, a cruel reminder of the late hour. I sighed, resigned to my fate, and decided to watch a movie to pass the time. Little did I know that this decision would plunge me into a surreal nightmare from which I might never wake. I selected a random movie from my streaming service, not paying much attention to the title or the plot. As the opening credits rolled, I settled into my cozy armchair, the dim glow of the TV casting dancing shadows across my living room. The movie began innocently enough, a mundane scene of a woman going about her daily life. But then, a shiver ran down my spine as a sense of déjà vu washed over me. The woman on the screen bore an uncanny resemblance to me. Her features, her mannerisms, her home, everything was eerily familiar. I couldn't tear my eyes away as I watched her life play out on the screen, each scene a mirror image of my own existence. As the movie progressed, I realized with mounting dread that it was not a coincidence. It was as if the filmmakers had somehow captured my life, every moment, every conversation, every secret, and were now projecting it onto the screen. The feeling of unreality intensified, and I found myself trapped in a nightmare of my own making. I watched helplessly as the woman in the movie faced the same challenges, the same joys, and the same heartaches that I had experienced in my own life. The details were uncanny. The exact words exchanged in conversations, the places I had visited, the people I had known, all laid bare on the screen. It was as if my life had been scripted and filmed without my knowledge or consent. As the movie reached its climax, the woman on the screen found herself in a situation that mirrored a recent crisis in my life. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched her struggle, her fear mirroring my own. And then, the realization struck me like a lightning bolt. This was not just a movie, it was a reckoning, a mirror reflecting the choices and consequences of my own life. The woman on the screen reached a pivotal moment, a decision that would seal her fate. I knew that moment well. It was a crossroads I had faced not long ago. As she made her choice, a sense of inevitability washed over me, and I understood with chilling clarity that I was watching my own destiny unfold. And then, it happened. The woman on the screen met her end in a way that mirrored my deepest fears, my darkest nightmares. The room around me seemed to close in, the walls closing like a vice. The TV screen flickered, and the room plunged into darkness. I sat there in the blackness, trembling, my mind reeling from the horror I had just witnessed. The clock on the wall no longer taunted me with its crimson digits. Time had ceased to have meaning. I was left with a paralyzing fear that I had glimpsed my own death, that I was trapped in a never-ending loop of my own life, destined to watch my own demise over and over again. As the first light of dawn broke, I remained frozen in my chair, haunted by the terrible revelation of that night. The movie, my life, and the boundary between reality and fiction had blurred into a nightmarish tapestry from which I could never escape. The truth hung heavy in the air. I might already be dead, condemned to relive my life's most harrowing moments for all eternity. Days turned into weeks, and I became a recluse, unable to escape the suffocating weight of what I had witnessed. I couldn't bring myself to watch any more movies, fearing that each one might reveal another chapter of my grim destiny. My days were filled with dread, and sleep remained an elusive specter that taunted me from the shadows. I grew increasingly obsessed with the movie, replaying it in my mind over and over, dissecting each scene, each choice, searching for clues that might explain the nightmarish revelation. I became convinced that the key to understanding lay within the film itself, hidden in the symbolism and subtext that had eluded me on that fateful night. In a desperate bid to unravel the mystery, I embarked on a quest to find the filmmakers, hoping that they might hold the answers I sought. My search led me down a labyrinthine path of obscure film festivals, underground screenings, and elusive directors who had vanished into obscurity. Finally, after months of relentless pursuit, I found a lead, a reclusive filmmaker named Victor Alden. known for his enigmatic and unconventional works. I tracked him down to a dilapidated studio in a remote corner of the city, where he had been living in isolation. When I confronted Victor with my story, he regarded me with a mixture of pity and resignation. He confessed that he had indeed created the film that had become my living nightmare. He explained that it was an experiment, an attempt to bridge the gap between reality and fiction, to explore the blurred boundaries of human existence. Victor's words sent a chill down my spine. He admitted that the film was not just a work of fiction, but a portal into the deepest recesses of human horror, a gateway to a realm where nightmares and reality converged. He spoke of a curse, a malevolent force that had infected the film, and how it had latched onto me, drawing me into its web of terror. I demanded answers, but Victor had none to offer. He had created a monster, a living nightmare that had taken on a life of its own, and now it sought to consume me. I pleaded with him to help me break free from its clutches, to undo the curse that had bound me to the film. Victor agreed to help, but the price was steep. He spoke of a ritual, a dark and forbidden ceremony that could sever the ties between me and the film, but it required a sacrifice, a piece of my very soul. I had no choice but to agree, for I was desperate to escape the living nightmare that had become my life. The ritual was conducted in the heart of the abandoned studio, a place of unspeakable darkness and malevolence. As Victor chanted incantations in a language I could not understand, I felt a searing pain in my chest, as if a piece of my very essence was being torn away. The room filled with a blending light, and I felt myself being pulled away from the film, away from the nightmare that had consumed me. I screamed in agony as I was torn from the abyss, my vision filled with blinding white. When I awoke, I was back in my living room, the TV screen blank, the nightmare seemingly over. But the memories of that night still haunt me, and I can never forget the chilling truth. I had come face to face with the very essence of horror, a darkness that exists beyond the realm of the living, a nightmare that had almost claimed my soul. I am left to wonder if it was all a dream, a hallucination brought on by a sleepless night and an overactive imagination. But deep down, I know the truth. The film, the curse, the ritual, they were all too real. And I am left with a chilling question that will haunt me for the rest of my days. What other horrors exist just beyond the edge of our perception, waiting to ensnare us in their malevolent embrace? A Halloween horror tale. It was the week leading up to Halloween, and the excitement buzzed through our small town like an electrified current. As a child, Halloween was always my favorite holiday, and I couldn't wait to choose the perfect costume. This year, however, I wanted something unique, something that would make me stand out among the ghosts, witches, and monsters that filled the streets. My fascination with masks began as I dug through an old trunk in our attic, uncovering treasures from Halloween's past. Among the dusty relics, I found a plain white mask, just waiting to be transformed into something extraordinary. Inspiration struck me like a lightning bolt. I would create my own mask, something so eerie and unique that it would become the stuff of legend in our town. With a sense of macabre determination, I gathered my supplies: acrylic paint, feathers, and even an old lock of hair I had cut during a recent haircut. I meticulously painted the mask, giving it the appearance of rotting wood and tarnished metal. It was a monstrous visage, the stuff of nightmares, and it thrilled me to see my creation take shape. The final touch, the lock of hair, was the most unsettling part of all. It was mine, cut with my own scissors, and there was something eerie about attaching it to the mask. As I glued it in place, I couldn't help but feel a strange connection, as if a piece of my soul was now woven into the very fabric of the mask. That night, after I had finished my masterpiece, I placed it on the shelf in my room, the lock of hair glistening in the moonlight. As I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, something that had awoken with the birth of my creation. The next morning, I awoke to a chilling sight. The mask I had created had somehow moved from the shelf to the foot of my bed. I stared at it in horror, my heart pounding in my chest. It was impossible. I must have moved it in my sleep, I thought. trying to rationalize the inexplicable. But the dread that had settled in the pit of my stomach refused to dissipate. Throughout the day, I noticed subtle changes in the mask. It seemed to pulse with a life of its own, the painted eyes following me as I moved around the room. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination, that my fear was playing tricks on me. As Halloween night approached, the mask's sinister transformation became undeniable. It no longer appeared to be a lifeless creation. It was as if it had taken on a malevolent personality of its own. It whispered to me in the dead of night, promises of power and control tempting me to put it on. But I resisted. I knew that to wear the mask would be to invite something dark and dreadful into my life. Yet, as Halloween night descended upon our town, a sinister compulsion gnawed at my resolve. I felt a magnetic pull, drawing me inexorably toward the mask, as if it were a siren's call. In a moment of weakness, I succumbed to the temptation. I donned the mask and it immediately adhered to my face with an unnatural clinging force. I could feel it melding with my skin, the lock of hair on the mask now intertwining with my own. The world around me twisted and contorted as if reality itself were unraveling. From that moment on, I was no longer in control of my body. The mask had taken over, and I was a helpless passenger in my own existence. It spoke through me, its voice a sinister, otherworldly whisper, and I watched in horror as my hands carried out its malevolent will. The mask craved more than just control. It hungered for souls. It lured unsuspecting victims into my path, its power growing with each dark deed. I could only watch in silent agony as my actions became increasingly monstrous, the mask's insatiable appetite for destruction driving me to the brink of madness. I knew that if I didn't break free from the mask's grip, I would become a vessel for its malevolence forever. But how could I escape the inescapable? Halloween had transformed from a beloved holiday into a nightmare from which I could never wake. As I stand here now, recounting my horrifying tale, I can only hope that someone will hear my plea for help. The mask's power may be formidable, but perhaps, just perhaps, there is a way to exorcise this evil and free my soul from the relentless darkness that now consumes me. The River's Secret. The woods echoed with the symphony of nature as my family and I embarked on a camping trip deep into the heart of the wilderness. It was a serene getaway, a chance to reconnect with the beauty of the natural world and with each other. My husband Michael and I held the hands of our two children, Emily and Noah, as we ventured further into the forest. The forest seemed to come alive with every step we took. The air was filled with the soothing sounds of rustling leaves and chirping birds. The sunlight filtered through the dense canopy above, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. It was a perfect day for an adventure. As we walked along the narrow trail, Noah, our curious and energetic little boy, couldn't contain his excitement. He darted ahead of us, his laughter ringing through the woods like a melody. We called after him, reminding him to stay close, but he was lost in his own world of discovery. It happened so suddenly, like a nightmare that materialized from thin air. Noah tripped over a root hidden beneath a blanket of fallen leaves and tumbled headlong into a dark, churning river that we hadn't noticed before. The current was swift, and it snatched him away from us in an instant. Without hesitation, Michael leaped into the river, his fatherly instincts taking over. He fought against the powerful current, desperately trying to reach Noah. But the river seemed to have a sinister intent, a malevolent force that sought to keep my husband away from our son. I watched in sheer terror as the river threatened to engulf them both. It was then that I saw Noah's tiny head break the surface. He was gasping for breath, struggling to stay afloat, but he was alive. Relief washed over me as I saw my son swim to the riverbank, his little body battered but miraculously unharmed. However, my joy was short-lived. I turned to look for Michael, expecting to see him emerge from the water as well, but he was nowhere to be found. Panic clawed at my chest as I scanned the turbulent river, calling out his name, but there was no answer. It was as if the river had swallowed him whole. Desperation gnawed at me as I ran to Noah's side, clutching him tightly. But as I held him, a wave of dread washed over me. Something was terribly wrong. My son's eyes, once filled with innocence and warmth, now held a darkness I couldn't comprehend. It was as if he were a stranger, a being that did not belong to me. I tried to hold him closer, to comfort him, but the moment my hands touched his wet skin, searing pain shot through my fingers. I screamed in agony, pulling my hands away as if they had been scorched by fire. My skin blistered and smoked where it had come into contact with Noah's body. I stumbled back, tears streaming down my face as I realized the cruel truth. This was not my son. This was something else, something that had taken Noah's form, but was not of this world. The creature that wore my son's face watched me with those dark, malevolent eyes, a sinister smile playing on its lips. I was trapped in a waking nightmare, torn between the love I felt for my son and the terror that this imposter inspired. The forest around us seemed to close in, the very trees whispering secrets that I could not decipher. The world had changed, and I was left to grapple with a horrifying reality. I had lost my husband to the river, and my son had become something otherworldly, something that defied understanding and defiled the bonds of family. As the creature that wore my son's face advanced toward me, I knew that I had to flee, to escape this nightmarish forest and the horrors it held. But the memory of my husband, lost to the river's dark embrace, haunted me, and I couldn't help but wonder if there was more to this wilderness than met the eye. With my hand still burning from the brief touch of the creature, I turned and ran, leaving behind the twisted reality that had swallowed my family whole. The forest seemed to stretch on endlessly, its secrets hidden in the shadows, and I was left with a chilling question that would torment me for the rest of my days. What malevolent force lurked in the heart of the woods, and what had become of my husband? Lost to the river's sinister depths,